Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Well, thanks for tuning in. Today, we are joined by Wes Cash, the Vice President of Services for Noria Corporation and the host of Gear Talk, the podcast that connects maintenance and reliability professionals with reliable information, insights, and experts, the folks in the trenches keeping industry moving. Welcome, Wes. Thank you for joining me today.
Greg, man, I am so happy to be on your podcast. This is exciting. You've had other Noria people on your podcast. You've had Bennett. You've had Travis. I've had the pleasure of you joining Gear Talk as well. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad, man. I love connecting with you. I love talking to you. And today we're just going to get into a few different things about you, what you do, a little bit of CMMS. It is CMMS Radio, but you in particular have this background that comes from, construction, HVAC, and you have an understanding of lubrication and oil analysis that is, at a level that makes an impact for anybody that can learn from you. So can you tell me a little bit more about how that all kind of started and then how you got to where you are at Noria?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's how many times have you heard the story that you didn't necessarily start out looking for that type of work, but you kind of fell into it, and it's been a good fit. So, like you said, my background, I grew up in rural Southwest Kansas. My family, still farms out there. And if you want to talk about kind of the origins of lubrication knowledge for me, I mean, it was farm equipment. It was very much tractors, combines, pickups, side-by-sides, four-wheelers, actually three-wheelers back in my day, before they took those away. And it was very simple, right? I mean, if something needed grease, you added grease to it till you saw it blowing out somewhere, because that meant it was good, because you're pushing all the old stuff out of the way. And for farm equipment, that's probably fine. For industrial equipment, not so much. And then I went to work for my dad. My dad had a construction company in Southwest Kansas as well. And I remember one time he's a big fan of case equipment. And case, so you've got Bobcat, right? Everyone knows the Bobcat. Case has the uniloader. They're both skid loaders. And he came up and he had a manual, and he had a grease gun, and he had a box of grease. He said, "You need to go grease that uniloader." Okay. So I started looking at it, there's a picture and it shows, points, for the grease gun and everything else. So of course, everything's caked in dirt. So you're just kind of blindly jabbing that grease gun at the muddy spots, hoping that there's something that it connects to, and changing oil, adding hydraulic fluids. We have hydraulically driven equipment. And, I left home and I went to Oklahoma State, and coming out of school, that's where, HVAC, and I was a compressor service tech. So, I mean, it was, going out and working on compressors or HVAC systems. So like, think about hospitals, some of the skyrise buildings downtown here in Tulsa, boilers, chillers, nothing massive, but, more than just your residential stuff. And there we were very pedestrian, I guess you could call it, with lubrication. I mean, we'd grease motors, occasionally. We had bearings, in air handler systems that we'd grease. And we started doing, PM work on some of these compressors. And some of these compressors, come with oil analysis, right? You take an oil sample, you send it off. And we'd take an oil sample, we'd basically crack the drain, catch some oil, send it to a lab. The lab would send us data back. And if it was red or yellow, we changed the oil. If it was green, we didn't worry about it. And I mean, that was about it. Never thought much about lubrication. And when I started working with Noria, I was brought in to work with, compressor failures and stuff like that, and really started to dive into best practices with lubrication and everything else. Man, it is a whole new world. And I mean, really, the world of reliability, all the tenets make sense, right? Because we want machines to last longer, and understanding that lubrication is very much, kind of foundational or a fundamental aspect of reliability. That's really where kind of everything, hand in glove went with me, because my dad worked at before construction, he worked for a beef packing plant. He was a maintenance foreman at a beef packing plant out in Southwest Kansas. And unfortunately, the machines dictated his schedule. It wasn't the time on the clock or anything else. It was the machines that are doing it. So, I mean, I remember little league games and school plays and stuff like that, looking out in the crowd and just seeing mom, not seeing dad because he was working on equipment. So for me, I want to take the tyranny away from the machines and give it back to the people. Well, lubrication's a good conduit for that. So that's really kind of if you wanted my origin story, that's about it.
Is wonderful. And I think what you said in there that I wanted to talk about and kind of relate it to CMMS is you mentioned reliability,
Yeah.
and you have a deep understanding of maintenance and reliability best practices because you get all this different exposure over these years. I think where you're at now, you're 12, 13 years there, the different experts, CMRPs, all these different like these people in maintenance that are really out there getting it done, the boots on the ground, the frontline workers, all the way up to the supervisors and everybody. So when it comes to CMMS, I've always seen maintenance and reliability really being at the heart of why those really are important for people to have. Now, that's aside from lubrication management systems, because then we could go next level. I know that Noria's got a great system called Lube PM, but
Yep.
with maintenance and reliability in and of itself, seeing how these best practices can keep dad at the game and not having to live under the rule of that machine that decided to break down today, that's awesome. So what do you see over your years so far when it comes to CMMS being a practical hub, if you will, for what people do in their various maintenance operations, whether it's farms, plants, etc.?
Sure. So, I don't know that I'd be going as far as saying, to be, having good reliability may not require, a CMMS work because I've seen people do it. I mean, I'm thinking back to HVAC. We had the traditional Rolodex paper, and I
Yep.
felt like I'd really brought us into the 20th century because I moved everything from paper to an Excel spreadsheet. Thought we were really doing well, but what happens is, right? You have to do the blocking and tackling. You have to do the work first and foremost, but the work can get sporadic, it can get chaotic. You don't necessarily know who's doing what. And the good thing about a CMMS is it really brings order to the chaos that can be industrial maintenance for sure, right? Better planning and scheduling, better history, right? Fault tracking to where now we can maybe forecast a little bit, help our spare parts inventory of what do we need to have on hand, kitting, right? If we're going to go out and do this job and it's planned, let's make sure that we got everything pulled together, that we can go out there and do it all together. So, I mean, it starts to consolidate, all that activity that may have been just left to the devices of the single technician or maybe a group of technicians, whatever that may be. So yeah, I mean it's a conduit to making that more orderly and definitely making it a little bit easier to put into practice. Because I mean, there's kind of two sides to the coin, right? I mean, they say traditionally, right, it's all skill or will, right? You can have all the skill in the world to do it, but if we're not willing to do it that way, what's going on? Well, the CMMS helps kind of bridge that gap because now it's you don't have the one person that's completely stressed, completely overworked, or anything else. We can smooth that out across multiple people. We can schedule things to be going on, and we get a better idea of exactly maybe even how much manpower that we need. Because for some reason you can have a technician over here screaming, man, I don't have enough hours in the day, we need more people or anything else. But until we start to look out and say, hey man, our PM backlog is however many hundreds of hours deep or so many work orders deep, that it really starts to open the eyes going, yeah, we probably need more help. So I think it's a valuable tool for many aspects. If anything else, it's a great visual tool to help track metrics and everything else.
Indeed. Couldn't agree more. And we could probably go on and on and on. Speaking of, not just CMMS and Noria, we've got this upcoming event in July 31st. It's July 31st through August 3rd, and it's the Reliable Plant Conference. And it's really exciting because this is the 25-year anniversary. And what Noria has been doing for 25 years is curating the knowledge, the information, the learnings, even the mistakes, and curating all that for people to learn and continue to improve. And at this particular conference, it will be people from around the world in these different capacities within their organizations. There's going to be a ton of great presentations, speakers, workshops. And I just wanted to ask you, what are you most excited about for the upcoming Reliable Plant Conference in Orlando, Florida?
Man, that's a tough question. I guess the best answer is getting to see you there, right? That's probably the best answer to give with that. But
Thank you.
there's so much to be excited about with this one. This is 25 years. It's our silver anniversary. There's been a ton of work that has gone into this conference to kind of bring the latest, the greatest, the best speakers, the best sessions. Our exhibit hall is packed with fantastic solutions around reliability, maintenance, lubrication. I mean, just everything. But I get excited about networking, coming in with people that's in similar fields, that are in similar walks of life, that have similar problems, and learning solutions that have actually been applied. I know, one of the workshops, it says, like lessons learned in 60 years of troubleshooting. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, think about that, 60 years of troubleshooting. I mean, yeah, that's I'm going to learn a lot from that one. And I mean, there's always great tidbits to take out there. We joke at Noria, that we're kind of like stamp collectors, right? Stamp collectors want to know like every little nuance of the stamp and all the different facets of it and everything else. Well, our stamps are reliability and lubrication best practices. We want to know, all right, how did we fix this problem? What was the problem? What was the solution? Is that a novel solution? And then we have to tie that back to practicality. Is this practical for certain industries? And you get so much of that at Reliable Plant. I always like to joke, that the only thing that changes is the accent. Everyone has very similar problems. They're just in different parts of the country, or really with the Reliable Plant, different parts of the globe. So getting people together and just to have that community, especially, that reliability community is probably more important now than it's ever been, with the continued push to become, leaner operating industries, and with manpower issues the way they are, the supply chain shined a light on a lot of things. So I mean, this reliability, I had one of my podcasts is the golden age of reliability, and that's where we're at right now. I mean, this is so important right now, and Reliable Plant is very much leading the charge in getting people involved in that reliability journey.
Absolutely. And getting with that theme of what Noria has done for so many years, when I talked about curating knowledge and learnings, that is the critical data. And we sometimes hear it referred to as tribology or tribal knowledge, where we get all this. And then what happens at a conference like this is there's a lot of trading of that. And so it kind of moves around throughout the world, little bits at a time. But that's important, because the alternative, if we're not getting together and gathering these people, thought leaders, whatever it might be, you're going to start losing that knowledge, that information. So I'm a big fan of what you guys do at Noria. I'm really excited to be able to go to this conference, because I've wanted to for many years. Even when I was working at my own CMMS company with my partners building it, I was like, we should go to this. And I go, too far away and all that. So now I get to go and check it out and meet a bunch of great people. I can't wait to meet you guys. Now, one of the things I was curious about with Gear Talk. Now that's your podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, will you have something going on at the conference as it relates to Gear Talk?
So, we're still in the planning phase of that. There are some logistical things that we'd have to work out. What we are excited about with the podcast and kind of that voice, or at least that way to get information out, is finding those people at conference that would be good folks to have on the podcast regardless. So whether we record there or we don't, there'll definitely be a presence, because we are looking for great people to interview, people that have a message, and really that's an important message that should be shared, which, like we talked about, whether it's tips, tricks, best practices, insights. One of my favorite interviews that I've done so far was a lady here with a tech school in Tulsa, who's talking about the importance of trades, and maybe even just having a trade certification as opposed to going to college, which I think is a very prudent topic to discuss at any point. And I just love hearing from different people's ways of life, their philosophies on reliability, maintenance, lubrication. So I think that absolutely. The podcast will have some form or fashion at the conference for sure.
Very good. Very good. Now, another thing, if I recall correctly, because I'm not looking at it right now, I got my little notes, but not the website. I believe Travis Richardson, one of your colleagues, is he going to be presenting? And it's something around Lube PM, which is Noria's product around, for folks out there that want to incorporate best practices in lubrication. Lube PM really helps you do that with routing and on all these great things. Because the reason this is on CMMS radio is your lubrication management takes you to that next level of process optimization when it comes to, we're doing all the things, the PMs, the scheduled maintenance for this, that, and the other. But now, how can we get better? Well, start digging into your lubrication, right? So is Travis going to be there presenting about Lube PM?
So we will be having a session related on lubrication management systems, as an overall. Basically, why a lubrication management system makes sense, right? Because there are several reasons that you want lubrication outside of a CMMS. There are several reasons that you may want lubrication inside of a CMMS. So the session is actually going to be more of a panel discussion of people from both sides of the fence, of kind of good, bad, indifferent, and it is meant to be a a collaborative session, kind of a working session of what is the feel of the industry out there as it pertains to lubrication management systems. Now, lubrication itself is a skilled trade, right? I mean, we need to break the mold of lubrication just being the kind of like me as a kid, give them a grease gun and send them away. No, it is a skilled trade. It requires skilled professionals. It requires instructions. It requires training. I mean, it requires a lot of things. So much so that it needs to be managed very specifically. And sometimes we lose that ability within CMMS systems. Now, there are CMMS, that work well. There are people that put it out there. But I mean, something that is as important to reliability, we need to have the utmost of visibility in how we're doing that. There's lots of ways to get there. Lube PM is a great example for that. It's not the only way to get there, but I mean, we feel it's one of the best ways to get there, if not the best way to get there. But yeah, it needs focus, it needs attention. And what better way to do it than having its own management system?
I like that. I was just thinking about everything you're saying and the talk I had with Travis about it and just understanding what this really is. When you think about lubrication or oil analysis, these are things that are happening. We're 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 not able to see them, right? Yeah, on your vehicle, you want to check the oil. Well, you have to stop and you have to, let it cool a little bit and then check the dipstick or something like
Yeah.
that. So, a lubrication management system and lubrication itself being a skilled trade, because I've seen some of the different certifications, the credentialing behind it,
Mhm.
it's very, very specific. So, it's almost like that's an aspect of what keeps your machine running. And now, when I say machine, I'm talking about the organizations that have machines that they rely upon.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I agree with you. So CMMS is, your computerized maintenance management software, but a critical and isolated component of that's going to make a very high impact on machine operability and longevity and production, etc., is the lubrication management. So it should be isolated. So it might inform a CMMS, or a CMMS might say, "Hey, go check and see if we're on track in that area as well." So I love it. It makes complete sense.
Yeah,
Now,
and it's not a one or the other, right? I
right.
mean, because I would say the vast majority of the planet that they're probably using some form of CMMS, right? It's yes, that communication between it. It is the visibility. I usually joke with people, that lubrication has an image problem, right? Because when you think about your lubrication program, you're probably thinking of someone in overalls that's covered in oil and grease and grit under his fingernails and everything else. And we almost have to break that mindset. It's lubrication requires a lot of delicacy. It requires using the the right amount of grease, the right place, the right time, every time, using the right procedures. And I mean, realistically, if you wanted a lube tech, you'd want to send them out there in a white lab coat or something like that. And you'd want it to be as pristine and as clean as possible, because that's how important it is. And that's what it takes to really have a good lubrication program, a world-class lubrication program. So we have to break this image problem with it, and just thinking, man, I don't want to go out there and get dirty and greasy. And yeah, I mean, people pop the hood of their car. That's probably a great example. And you're looking down in there, and you almost just kind of like, ugh, I don't want to mess with that. Well, I mean, that's a very critical thing that we do need to mess with, and we need to understand.
Yeah, it's where it's really happening. Because look, anything that requires lubrication, if there's contact to contact and there's some form of friction and lubrication is not being managed properly, serviced properly, monitored to make sure proper viscosities and things of this are still holding up, then everything's going to fail. So it's absolutely critical. And I think that idea, for me, hey, a little grease under the nails, a little dirt and grime, not a problem, man. It means
Right.
You're doing stuff. Frontline workers really get stuff done. That's how it all really happens. But I do like what you're talking about, where, this is far more precise than what people may think. And it's worth exploring and understanding that, so that, there can be a lot more respect for what that is. Because if your lubrication fails, everything else is going to fail, right? We can agree on that.
We can agree on that. And, I usually joke with people, I love the Discovery Channel, and I love watching the race shows and the car rebuilding shows and everything else. And my job's not done until I stop seeing them with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of engines that they're just, cracking open a bottle of oil and pouring it in with a funnel that who knows last time it was cleaned, or, why aren't we filtering the oil going into some of these things? So that's the bellwether, right? Once it becomes mainstream, we'll know that we've made an impact.
There you go. And you just keep pushing along that. Well, this is all great information. I want to be really mindful of your time, because I know you guys are getting ready for the upcoming show. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Even though a lot of it's done, there's still a lot to do. I know there's going to be some drops in the digital publications that Noria puts out about that. I'm going to continue to talk about it on the different podcasts and maybe some of my posts, because, I think if people have an opportunity and you haven't registered yet to go to the Reliable Plant Conference, I really sincerely think it's worth it. And there is an opportunity there's a few different people that are going to be speaking there that might be able to secure you a discount, but Noria was kind enough with me to allow that same thing. So I'll get some form of linking, maybe when I drop this on LinkedIn, and there's going to be a code you can use, GC10. That'll get you a discount on your registration. So that'll help some people get there, because the more people, the merrier, right?
That's exactly it. I do want to add to that, because even if you can't make it to conference, we produce a lot of material that is completely free. You can always subscribe to our Reliable Plant newsletters, our machinery lubrication newsletter, both of which are magazines as well. You can go to either reliableplant.com, machinerylubrication.com, click the subscribe button. That's all free information. That is coming to you free of charge. So even if you can't make it to conference, I highly urge you to subscribe to some of our content, because it is fresh content. It comes out continually. And like we said, we're trying to curate, kind of the best and the brightest, keep you up to date on what's going on in the industry. It's a good outlet for it.
Outstanding. And also, everybody, make sure you check out Gear Talk. That's Wes's podcast. It's got good stuff. I love the studio you guys set up. I'm just so impressed with it. And I know what your team does behind the scenes to make it happen. They do all the camera switching and all that. It's really solid stuff. How do people get in touch with you, Wes, if they want to just have their own conversation, learn more about you, learn more about Noria and all the great things you guys do?
Yep, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, but the most direct way to get a hold of me, email works fantastic. wcash@noria.com, probably the best way to do it.
I'll drop that on the video version of this episode so people can reach out. Again, being mindful of your time. Thank you again, Wes. This was great. I look forward to doing it again. And I look forward to seeing you at Reliable Plant, man. That's going to be fun.
I'll be there, and I'm looking forward to it as well. And yes, very much thank you for letting me be on your show. Loved it.
Anytime. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS from selection to implementation to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.